Congressman Lee Zeldin, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So you've been crisscrossing the state since you announced your candidacy. It's been a few months. You were the first person to announce this year. Tell me what you're hearing from voters, because obviously you're talking to a lot of people while you're out there. What are their concerns? What are they telling you?
New Yorkers are talking about their breaking point. They're talking about how they are considering leaving our state. They feel like they don't have a voice and representation in our state capital. It's coming from all over New York. It's coming from New Yorkers of all walks of life. They're talking about the economy and cost of living, public safety and the need to support law enforcement more. They're talking about their kids' education, the way that restrictions came from the state capitol and the governor's office going through the pandemic. They're talking about the governor himself and how they feel like he's been there too long and it's time for him to go. They are very much personalizing this election and the stakes emotionally, passionately, with hunger. And I noticed very early on it was last standish in a way, where they really feel like they have to do their part, understanding fully the stakes if they're complacent.
Yeah, this is a really interesting election because Governor Cuomo would be going to a fourth term that would be almost unprecedented in the state. And if you were to become the governor, you would have to get votes from people across the aisle because we have Democrats outnumbering Republicans registered. So what's your plan to get those moderates, independents, and Democrats, assuming you are the Republican nominee?
Well, first off, I never paint all of one party with one broad brush. So understanding that where you are in the state, some Democrats feel like their party's left them. Some Democrats are proud to be Democrats, but they feel like Andrew Cuomo's been there too long and it's time for him to go. I support term limits. I would call on the state legislature to term limit me to 2 terms, and even if they don't term limit me, I still wouldn't run for a 3rd term. It's a bad idea. This governor's in his 3rd term, showing us why. And I believe that there are Democrats, some are more liberal, others consider themselves to be moderate, some are considering themselves to be conservative. They have different priority issues. So you might talk to one Democrat in New York City who might be a strong supporter of the defund the police movement, and their neighbor is a Democrat, an active Democrat, proud Democrat voter, but they believe that we should be reversing cashless bail, keeping qualified immunity, and supporting law enforcement more. Education, there are a lot of Democrats who feel strongly that our kids, when they go back to school, should not be required to get the vaccine. They believe that they shouldn't be required to be masked up. There's strong support for school choice. I support tax credits for school choice. I believe that we shouldn't be getting rid of advanced academics in the name of equity. So when you talk to a Democrat voter, you have to engage them on the issues that matter most to them and have a quality, substantive, meaningful one-on-one conversation. You have to work hard, you could take nothing for granted, and you have to be accessible. And that's why I've already been to all the counties in New York State. I'm traveling around again. I'm on the road right now. We'll be back on the road as we get into next weekend, and we're not taking anything for granted. You have to work hard to earn support, and you can't just assume it.
Right, you have been everywhere. You've just been going across the state. And as you make that journey across the state, top Democrats, every time that they mention you, they immediately go to your alliance with former President Donald Trump, your conservative voting record in Congress, and of course, your vote against certifying the election results in January. And I want to give you a chance to explain that. Why was that the right move to do at the time?
Yeah, well, first off, every single time there's been a Republican presidential win over the course of the last few decades, there's been objections filed by House Democrats. So this isn't some new thing that took place. When I talk to voters and ask them what are the issues that matter most to you, they're talking to me about wanting to, they want a governor who's going to fight for their wallets, for their safety, for their freedoms. They are talking about leaving New York State. They want to know what we can possibly do about it on issues that matter most. You talk to a small business owner in the state, and a local job creator, ask them what they want to talk, what do you want us to be talking about? They're going to talk about the inability to get workforce to come in. I mean, I'd say all across the entire state help wanted signs, not because there isn't an available worker in their community, but that available worker is saying, hey, listen, I'm actually getting paid more not to take that job. And that's having real impacts. Now, I personally believe as it relates to elections that we should always be engaging with each other about election integrity. We should find ways to make it easier to vote, to make it harder to cheat. In New York State, we have actually a lot of different voter laws that are on the books that you would say are actually stricter than what you might find in other states. We have signature verification here. You can have poll watchers when you vote. You can closely observe the opening of ballots. You can submit an objection, and if you want to stick to that objection, that ballot's not going to get counted until it gets in front of a judge. We should, regardless of outcome, whether your candidate comes in first or second, always be having a conversation with each other about how can we make this process better. I have long been somebody who believes greatly in election integrity, and I think that you'll actually have more trust in the process by welcoming that conversation, regardless of whether your candidate comes in first or second.
So was that vote a stance of you saying that you want to improve election integrity nationwide, or was it you saying that you didn't trust the election results?
Well, most specifically, the issue that I had with regards to what happened in 2020 was because we had a pandemic, and in the name of the pandemic, you had non-state legislative actors making changes to how their elections were administered.
Right.
So if you were the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania, entering into a friendly lawsuit settlement with the League of Women Voters, without going and asking the state legislature for approval, they changed the way that the election was administered. In Wisconsin, you had a county elections official who is telling the voters in their county how to get around the voter ID law and the signature verification law in that particular county. For me, and this is in the United States Constitution, state legislatures set how these elections should be administered. And in the name of the pandemic, there were changes made without seeking that approval. Now, going forward, there are going to be times in the future where maybe you get hit with a hurricane, some other type of a natural disaster. Maybe it's another pandemic just before an election. And now based on whether it's a Republican in power or a Democrat in power, that you have some governor or some secretary of state or some elections commissioner unilaterally making huge consequential changes. I believe that that constitutional provision was written purposefully. It's something that should be followed and respected, and that was something that was my biggest issue that I was talking about.
So I think that issue probably isn't going to go away. Another issue that's not going away immediately, at least, is crime in New York. I think that we covered cost of living already. So what's your plan to reduce crime? That's like the big issue right now, especially in New York City, cities like Rochester, Albany, Buffalo. How do we get that crime rate down?
Okay, we should reverse cashless bail. We should keep qualified immunity. We should be proudly supporting law enforcement. I mean, they selflessly, courageously do an important job. If there's a bad actor who does something wrong, the system should crack down on that person who did the wrong thing. There should be accountability. And I was raised in a law enforcement household, and I have found that law enforcement wants to hold their own accountable when that person does the wrong thing. Now, I do believe that there should be a Bill of Rights for law enforcement enacted at the state level, that we should recognize their inherent right of self-defense. I don't believe that we should be changing the use of force laws. They want to say that necessity isn't enough of a standard. They want to change that standard. I don't agree with that. I believe they should have all the resources and tools they need to do their jobs as effectively as possible. I don't believe that they should be unfairly targeted by investigations. I believe that their training should be as effective as it can be. I believe that we should be building trust between law enforcement and local community leaders. There's a huge positive direct benefit to public safety when you lean into that to work on building trust. Public safety is a big issue for many New Yorkers. For many New Yorkers I'm hearing from, they tell me that it's their number one issue.
Yeah, I think that's true across the state. And, I hope, honestly, that it's not an issue next year. I hope our crime rates do go down, but we'll have to see. And we do have to leave it there. Congressman Lee Zeldin, the presumptive Republican nominee for governor, thank you so much.
Great to be with you.